And now, it's time for TJwow.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to the Training Journal webinar. We are so pleased to have you with us today, and have so many of you with us today. This is me, I'm the Deputy Editor of TJ, and I'm really looking forward to facilitating this conversation, not least because of the topic, but our way of approaching webinars. It's all about the conversation. We think, one of the best things about going to a conference or a training session is having a cup of coffee with somebody mid-morning, having lunch, maybe going to the pub afterwards and having a good old natter. And that's what we are doing here today. You've got that chat window. I can see lots of you saying good morning and hello to each other. So thank you very much. Hello to all of you. Some names I recognise and names I don't. So welcome absolutely everybody to the session. We've also got a Q&A box. You can use that anytime. We're going to have a very busy chat window today. So if you're thinking, actually, I've got a specific question I'd really like to ask on this topic, then you can use that Q&A pod and we will do our absolute best to go and answer that for you. If you've got a microphone working, you can always put your hand up at any point if you want to ask a question and let me know. You can also join us on Twitter on #TJwow if you want to share anything out to your personal learning network, out to the world a little bit more. You are welcome to do that, and you can continue the conversation afterwards with that as well. And we also have John, who is our editor, John Kennard, and he will be doing a whole load of tweets, so you can go and follow those there anytime you like, and he says hi all in the chat. Okay, now our sessions are all available on the Training Journal website. All the previous ones are on the Training Journal website as well, so you can always go there. You can sign up for our next webinar. I'll tell you more about that at the end, and all of the recordings. This webinar today is sponsored by SumTotal, and SumTotal are the only talent management solution that connects critical capabilities that you have in the workforce for recruitment, engagement, development, and reward. We're very excited that we are working with them today. Let's move into finding out a little bit more about our speakers. We have Kirsty, Krystyna, and Lorna, and I'm going to bring their webcams on now, and they are going to introduce themselves. So let's bring those webcams onto the screen so that everybody can see our lovely speakers today. Here we go, a little hello from everybody. And let's have some introductions. So let's go to Krystyna first, then Kirsty, and then Lorna. So Krystyna, just tell us very briefly, what is it that you do? And I'll share some of your details in the chat window.
Hi, I'm Krystyna Gadd. I'm founder of How to Accelerate Learning, and we help people to perform better through learning and facilitation, whether it's through webinars or whether it's face-to-face, and that is something that I am really, really passionate about. It's something I discovered when I was an IT trainer, and I was sent onto a facilitation skills course, and I've never looked back, really. That's me.
Sounds excellent. And Kirsty, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Kirsty Lewis, founder of the School of Facilitation. A bit like Krystyna, I was in the world of commercial sales and capability with Diageo, and I would often sit there and wonder why workshops worked and workshops didn't work. And I just got really into the whole how to design great face-to-face learning and delivery, because often we deliver, but we don't get any feedback or some support on what we're doing with our language or body language. So that's what we do at the School of Facilitation.
Thank you, Kirsty. And Lorna, tell us a little bit about yourself. Oh, let's get you unmuted, Lorna.
Schoolboy error. There we go. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Lorna Matty, Training and Development Manager for Toyota Financial Services. What does that involve? A lot of things. Delivering training, looking after talent management, a whole host of other things. The remit is 20 locations across mainly Europe, one in South Africa, and we're currently running a management development program using virtual classrooms. So hopefully I can add some of the experience I've had rolling that out this time, and We've just started one now. We did one last year to this conversation. So looking forward to finding out what other people's interest in around this topic is all about.
Thank you very much, and a brilliant introduction as well. And of course there's me. Now normally I just host a conversation, and I'm going to do that today, but also many of you know that virtual classrooms is my absolute area of passion and specialism. So I will be kind of involving myself just a little bit more in this conversation this time round. So let's start with just a little bit about answering our questions. So our question starting point that we've got today, and I'd love to know in the chat window what your thoughts are on this as well, is can you really facilitate a group in a virtual classroom? So let's start with Lorna first, then Krystyna, and then Kirsty, and just give us your headline thoughts on that question. Lorna.
Well, it's interesting because I think by asking that question there's an implication that you can't. So I feel that you can, clearly, because that's what I've been doing since 2010, I think, since I started getting involved in virtual classrooms. And I firmly believe that whatever you can do in a face-to-face environment, you can replicate pretty much in the virtual classroom. And what do we mean by facilitate? For me, facilitation is about it being very learner-centered, and it's about guiding the learners through a topic to bring to some conclusion where they can identify how they can take forward whatever that subject matter is all about. And I firmly believe that in the virtual classroom that is very, very, very possible. And we've had great success doing that with primarily management development, but I started off with equality and diversity, not looking at it from an employment law perspective, but the actual behaviours that underpin diversity and equality. And we saw such success with that because of how we looked at it from a behavioural aspect. That's what really encouraged me to think about it could be done for other things that are skills-based, not just technical-based. So that's my kind of headline about it, but I'll be very interested to find out what other people's thoughts about that as well.
Thank you, Lorna. That's a really good answer. So
I would say yes, and absolutely. When I first started doing webinars, it was a bit scary, and I think it was the time when we didn't have such good Wi-Fi and broadband, so it was very sort of a scary prospect. What I sort of discovered, I suppose, was that you've got to just remember what makes good learning. And good learning for me is about that interaction. It's about putting those questions out there, even if you don't necessarily look at all of the answers. You know, the brain works in a way that it's always trying to solve problems. And if you put questions out there, that's a way that you can get that interaction. And for me, it's absolutely, you can actually facilitate a group in just the way you've got to go back to what makes good learning. And good learning is about asking questions, it's about listening, it's about creating some curiosity, it's about being multisensory, it's about also thinking about, well, how will we make this memorable as well? And again, going back to how the brain works, you think, well, what is it? It's stories, it's pictures, a whole host of things that you absolutely can do. Now, Joe, when I started to come back to sort of doing webinars after a bit of a break, I know we had a bit of a play around, and the software that you can get these days absolutely does promote that. That's the other thing that I found, is that when I first started doing webinars years ago, it was quite primitive. Broadband connections weren't good. These days, with better broadband connections and fantastic software, love, love, love Adobe Connect, but there are other products out there. I use Zoom as well, and they've got fantastic features as well. So those are my thoughts, just for a starter.
Excellent, thank you, Krystyna. And Kirsty, now we've done an interview, but in case anybody hasn't heard it, you're a little bit newer to this area. So tell us what your thoughts are on this.
This is webinar number 3 for me, and I have always been a face-to-face facilitator and trainer. And whilst I've played with like the Skype for coaching, I've never used like virtual classrooms. So when Joe said to me, do you want to come and do this? I was a bit like, yeah, but what can I add? And literally in the last 6 weeks, I've had a play with using webinars with the School of Facilitation community. And I guess I am so new and at the beginning of my journey. I don't know what I don't know. B, I can totally relate to anyone who's out there questioning the validity of using webinars and classrooms. And I think it's more driven by a lack of knowledge and a lack of understanding. And Lorna, I was really interested by your comment, which was when I had that success and I could see how it worked and what it did for the learners. I think that's because I don't have that and I can't work out how it works. And then technology as well. I mean, there's just so many different variations on a theme, and working out what the right technology is for what you want to be able to achieve. I'm still trying to work that out as well. So that's where I'm at. So a question mark and still working it out.
I think that's a really interesting place to be, Kirsty, and that's exactly why I wanted you here, is because people that are attending today will be in different places on their journey. You know, I've been doing this for 5 years. It's my passion. I do it pretty much day in, day out. You're at the other end of that scale of just trying things out, and if I can put words in your mouth, a little bit nervous, a little bit unsure, trying things as you go along with some success, but at the same time, as you say, you don't know what you don't know. And I think all of those things can be really challenging, and there's going to be a lot of people here today who are anywhere along that spectrum of where we are. Debbie, who's our editor-in-chief here at Training Journal, says, I think the software is key, as is the confidence and skill of the moderator, facilitator. I couldn't agree with you more there, Debbie. I'm always saying to people, it's plan, practice, prep, plan, practice, prep, plan, practice, prep, until I get tongue-tied and can't say it anymore. And Laura's saying we're definitely in the same place as Kirsty. There you go, Kirsty. So you should be okay with that. Okay. So what I mean, everybody probably knows pretty much my answer on this, which is yes, of course, you can facilitate in the virtual classroom for exactly the reasons that the ladies have shared. And Sarah makes a great point in the chat. Sarah Stocks says, I agree, Debbie, but we're hard on ourselves. We have a lot of these skills already. Oh, Sarah, I love that. So often I'm saying to people, especially if they're really good trainers, facilitators, teachers, or presenters, it's like, you have those skills, and what we need to do is just layer on a new set of the technology and different ways that we behave in what we're doing in a virtual classroom or in a webinar. There's some crossover in what you do there. Let's go into our first question. So Dawn Bullock, thank you very much for your question in the Q&A pod. So I'm going to come to Chris on this one first, then to Lorna. So Dawn's question is, how do you encourage less motivated or interested delegates to engage virtually?
My thoughts
Krystyna,
are
what are your
the same
thoughts
as what
on that?
I would do if I was face-to-face with people. If you've got somebody who's demotivated and not interested, it's really hard work to get them interested once they're in the actual classroom. So for me, if you're in the virtual classroom, you need to do some work beforehand to get them interested. The what's in it for me, you know, what are you going to achieve? Get some stuff going on, you know, even if it's just asking them questions, a bit of pre-work. I like to sort of send people a teaser, you know, think about ... you know, have a question there that they're thinking about and come with this answer, come ready to discuss this. And so I think it's not any different to the face-to-face arena, in that you need to prepare them beforehand. You need to think about what are they trying to get out of it, what are they going to bring to it, and how are you going to engage them beforehand. So you need to do that preparation beforehand. That's what I believe anyway.
Thank you very much. And Lorna, what are your thoughts on that question about how do you encourage less motivated or interested delegates to engage
with a
virtually?
lot of what Krystyna has said there. I think it's the same as what you would do face to face, and I think that phrase is going to come out time and time again in this conversation. What would you do face to face? How would you do it in the virtual world? It's not like it's either or. It's the same skills that you have to use in both situations. What we have done, and I agree with what Krystyna said, it's about why are they there in the first place? Because if somebody doesn't want to be there, then there is a problem that's happened in terms of getting them to that place in the first place. We often, or not often, before our management development program that we're currently doing now, we run kickoff sessions. So that kickoff session is to help them understand the technology so that they can get on board and their microphone works and everything works, etc. But also to get them excited about the topic itself and find out if they are in the right place. Are they on the right course? Is this what they want to do? We've found by doing that, they have got really excited about the technology. We've given them a taster of what they are going to see in the program itself. And the feedback that we've got is, wow, I didn't know the technology could do all of this. I was skeptical in the first place. I'm really looking forward to starting on the first module. So that kickoff session for us has been crucial in actually engaging them. Not only have we done it for the participants, but we've done it for the line managers as well. So this time round, we've got all the line managers first, and we have engaged with them on virtual classrooms. So they have got first-hand experience of what the technology that their staff are going to experience is like. And that has got them fired up about it as well. And we have seen tremendous results from doing that, in that the staff coming onto the course want to be there. They want to get something out of it. They've had a conversation with their line manager. The line manager understands what the technology is all about and how it all works. So for me, I mean, that's a bit, I'm rambling on a little bit, but I think that is what we have done, and we have found that that has had tremendous results this time round. And Kirsty, coming back to you, you know, you're at the start of your journey. I'm learning something new every single time. So we ran, I would say it was a successful management development program last year, but having done that, we have learned so much, and we have changed what we have done this time round, and we are just amazed by the results that we're getting just at this early stage. And we've just done module 1 of our management development program, and the comments have just been fantastic. The people have turned up on time, which is one of my big issues. They're not turning up on time, but they're turning up on time. They know what's going on, and they're asking fabulous questions. So that would be my answer to you, Dawn, and I hope that has helped.
I think for me though, the whole not being engaged, so you might have people that come online, and especially from a workplace perspective, how you can create engagement beforehand, I really get that, and how you've done it, both of you, in different ways, is how do you know if people are disengaged when they're actually online, and how do you then create that engagement? Because that's the bit I find a challenge, is I'm assuming that people have signed up to the webinars because they want to be there, but I'm getting in some instances people are having to go on these webinars because it's a workplace request. So how do you then create the engagement in the room, virtual room, in those situations? I mean, how do you read that audience?
I think it comes back to what Jo and Krystyna said earlier on, about having the right tool and using so if you go on webinars a lot of the time, it's normally just a presentation and a chat box. But if you've got other tools available to you and you use those tools, you can get the engagement. And there is a rule of thumb of having engagement every 3 or 4 minutes, I think it is. And I think that also helps to ensure that they are still with you. So we use the green ticks and the red crosses an awful lot. We use the chat bots, but we also use breakout rooms as well. And for us, the breakout room has been the big revelation for us on our management development program, where you actually get them into rooms. Bless you. And we actually get them into the breakout rooms, and we actually get them chatting, and we can talk to them in there and make sure that they are engaged. It's also about the design. Bless you again. It's also about the design of your training. In the same way that you do it in the face-to-face, you would design it in a way to make it engaging. And I think virtual classroom is no different. It's how you design it to actually engage them. And we use scenarios, we use lots of examples, we use lots of discussions and open questions that really try to tease out their thinking about that subject. And if we have like 2 people on our virtual classrooms, there's Liz, the facilitator, who I think is on this session today, and myself as the host. And what often happens is I am monitoring the chat box, and I'm looking to see if people have engaged or not engaged. I'll be starting to ask questions. It's like there's 2 of us that are working very much together to make sure that we are including or making sure everybody's included in that session. So I don't know if that helps, Kirsty.
I think also if you have a host and a presenter, it takes an awful lot of pressure off the presenter in terms of sort of you can, the host can be looking at the chat box to see if there's engagement, the host can interject sometimes and give the presenter a bit of a break, and you can see whether or not people are engaged by what's going on in the chat box. And just going back to the software thing and what platform you're using, even if you've got a limited platform, you can actually just eke the heck out of it with whatever you've got, whether it's just a chat box and you can get engagement. It's about exactly as you would in face-to-face. How do you know if people face-to-face are engaged? Well, they answer the questions, that the questions are coming in thick and fast, or the answers are coming in. So in exactly the same way, even if it's things like the annotation tool, get everybody to write something, make a smiley face or whatever, you can get people doing stuff and you can see quite quickly. And in an online classroom, you would have a limited number of people. You wouldn't have, say, 50 or whatever, not commonly anyway. I think the definition, is that the definition, Joe, of an online classroom? It's usually a smaller number than, say, a webinar. Yeah, so you would have a smaller number. So yeah, so if you have 8 to 10 people, it's not difficult to actually monitor who's doing what and who's coming in, and if you've got engagement. And if I sometimes notice that one person specifically hasn't said anything or contributed, sorry, my phone's just gone off. So if somebody hasn't contributed and you've got that number of people, I would just say to them, oh, we haven't heard from you, Kirsty, for a while, so what are your thoughts on this? I would actually just ask them as well, exactly as you would face to face as well. So
Gosh, this is running thick and fast today. I'm barely able to keep up with what's going on in chat. We've got loads of great questions. So I'm going to let's try and power through some of these so that we can ask these. We might have to do a follow-up on this. This is probably our busiest session I've ever seen. So our next question, we have, I wrote it down somewhere. Here it is. So Bobby Akabu. Bobby, do you think you can unmute and do you want to say what your question was? Should we try that out?
Yeah.
And you? Oh, fantastic.
So Bobby, I can hear you, Bobby. Go ahead. So you asked a question about a method.
You was discussing earlier on with regarding to when you have somebody who's not interested within a virtual participation classroom. What I tend to do, I don't know if it's the right method or not, is to find something that they're interested in, and I've somewhere along the way managed to insert it within the content so that to keep them engaged. So it's like a role reversal that I made them a presenter or facilitator for the next 10-15 minutes. Is that the right method to use in order to get that person to actually realize they're here for a reason rather than just a tick box exercise?
Sounds good to me. Sounds a really good idea about this. Yeah. Get them on board. Again, it's sort of, if you've got a webinar and it's a business focused webinar and you've got great objectives for the business, you could have the best objectives in the world, but if you don't pay attention to what the learners need from it, the participants, then it's going to fall flat. So it's the same as face to face. You need to find out what's in it for them. And so, I think that's a fantastic idea, Bobby.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think also the preamble that as we had today is quite crucial to it, because you actually do find out an awful lot about the individuals beforehand. You find out why they're there. You find out something that's interesting about them, and you can often weave that into the presentation later on. So I think that warm-up is actually quite crucial. We have found out so much about our staff before the course actually starts. They start to engage with each other via the chat, and they're starting to get to know each other, and then that feeds itself through into the actual training session itself. So what we have found is that because there are so many tools, and I agree with you, Krystyna, when I started doing virtual classrooms, I literally just had chat. That's all I had. I didn't have really anything else, and it was still engaging. It's as I've grown to learn the tools much more, and we're using other features, then we started to develop those skills a lot more. But they start to talk to each other. They have said that by being able to say what they want to say whenever they want to say it, rather than perhaps in a classroom where they have to wait their turn, they found that that is much more engaging for them and they can interact. And that was the feedback we had from a line manager the other day. They said it was so interactive, much more than when they were in a face-to-face environment. And I hear that time and time and time again.
And one thing that you can't do face-to-face that you can do in a webinar is you can have multiple sort of people typing in exactly the same moment, and you can get a whole splurge of information that would probably take a lot longer face to face. So there's quite often people are saying there are disadvantages to webinars because it's not the same as face to face, but this is one key advantage I found to webinars. You can get a whole load of information. So if we were to ask a question of everybody right now and everybody started typing, there would be a whole barrage of information that we would actually be able to get much, much quicker than if we were face to face. So that's a huge, huge advantage as well.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much, Bobby, for your question. Hopefully that's helped a little bit. Now, Fiona asked a question in the Q&A about how do you get interaction and run a pair or small group exercise in virtual sessions. Fiona, I think we've answered that one fairly well, and do kind of add another question if you think actually we've missed a bit, but we've talked a lot about interaction. But some of the things you can do, you're saying Fiona, you're saying yes. You've got your breakouts, which we're not using today, but they function exactly the same as you go off to the cafeteria, you go off to meeting room and do something with a flip chart, for example. And if you want to do pairs, what you can do is private chat with each other. So you can do that now if you wanted to. You can go and click on somebody's name and send them a private message. So you could have people doing a private chat for a couple of minutes, and that's the same as, turn to the person next to you and have a conversation. So we've got a question from Sarah Stocks for Lorna, and she was asking, you were describing an approach, and how do you get the business to agree with your approach?
So
Lorna?
I haven't had a problem really with getting the business to buy into this, because I've done it so that it meets a business need. So when we look at, so for example, the equality and diversity training, that was born out of an initiative that the company was doing to improve its employer brand. And it decided that equality and diversity was something that was important for everybody in the business it was important, a subject for everybody to know, because it supported that brand entirely. And we had at that time offices in Africa and Asia as well as the UK, and to really do that face-to-face was not going to be cost effective, and so when I proposed virtual classrooms, I mean, I had never done it before, so this was my first actual dive into doing it. It actually meant it was not from the learning development perspective, but it was supporting a business project, and that was how they bought into it and said, yes, let's go with it and see how it goes. And they were kind of with me on it being a new way of actually delivering the training. It was so successful, and I think it was successful because people in our international offices had said for quite a while from employee engagement surveys that they didn't feel they had equal opportunity to learning and development. It was very opportunistic. It was kind of privileged. So if you were of a senior grade, you could go on a face-to-face course and get on an aeroplane and go somewhere. But people on a day-to-day basis who needed training, and in fact were front-facing to our customers, were the people that were not getting the training themselves. And so that in itself was another endorsement for the business to say, well, this is another way of doing it, let's see how it goes. Because of the success of that, I didn't actually have to then do the marketing. It was the staff themselves that said, we really think this is a great tool. and why aren't we using it more as an organisation? And then that led to one of our executive directors knocking on my door and saying, what is this virtual classroom thing? He kind of heard about it and was kind of half listening to it, but it wasn't until the staff then said, this is actually a way of actually bringing learning to us at the time that we need it, that he kind of started paying more attention. As a result of that, it then led on to using it for staff briefings. So we were able to use it from a business perspective to ensure that briefings that were needed for everybody simultaneously, rather than this drip feed approach, we started to use it for that. And then it just grew and grew and grew until when I left the organisation, we had an enterprise account so that everybody had their own actual host license. So that's how I started. Here in Toyota, it was a similar thing. We had a need for staff across 20 locations to get training. And what is a way to do that? E-learning wasn't the solution, and they hadn't heard of virtual classrooms, and Toyota is very much a company that likes to learn how to do things differently. And they said, let's give it a go, Lorna. And well, I'm in my second year of doing this program and have now been to Japan to explain it to them. So I'm hoping that it's going to even grow further and further across the rest of the organisation. So I hope that gives you an insight into how I've done it. But I've never kind of promoted it as a learning and development tool. I promoted it as a tool that will help the business in whatever the issue or challenge that business is having at that time. And for us, it was equality and diversity and spreading that message. And now it's a case of we have a wide management population that needs to have training as and when, rather than a privilege going on a plane and going somewhere, and it's not cost effective for us to do it that way. Yeah.
Wow, Lorna, there's an awful lot to take away from that, and you've had some huge success. We've chatted over the last few months about, and I think that you highlight that really well. So thank you so much. Let's power on through our questions. So our next question will come to Kirsty first, and then we'll go to Krystyna. And the question is, could you say something about how you learned to use the software effectively? So Kirsty, you're quite new on this journey. Where are you at the moment?
Puts me quite happily in the space of practice. What's that all about? Then quite intuitive. So I will totally admit that I had one play with the technology before I then used it live, and then just felt my way through the situation in that first hour. Yeah, probably should have done some more practice, but me being me, I just had a lot more fun just doing as I went. And also I had a brief conversation with you, Joe, so you gave me some pointers, which was really helpful, and I also went around your website and had a really good nose. And again, it wasn't until I was in it and in the moment that I sort of realised what the different possibilities were. And so even if I'd read up on it, watched videos, practiced and played, I just know that for me personally, until that moment, I wouldn't have probably worked out what I didn't know and therefore what I could have done differently. I get the sense though that if you can find someone who's a good teacher, then that's always a good way to start. And also probably going on other people's webinars or virtual classrooms and notice what are they doing with the technology. I mean, just even now sitting on this, I'm like, I see what's going on here. I'm getting more of my own ideas. Joe Jacobs said, Kirsty, that sounds terrifying. That's the way I work. So it wasn't terrifying for me. Actually, it was fine. But I get that everybody's different, and therefore some of you will be like, I need the practice. I need to read the documents. I need to play. And I think it's just each to their own in this situation.
So, having been an IT trainer and in a previous life, one of my biggest fears was that technology would somehow scupper everything and make a mess of everything. And so, for me, practice has been really crucial. And I remember, I think it was one of your webinars actually that you did, and it was on Adobe Connect, and I noticed it, and I sat going, how on earth are they doing all of these things? And windows were moving, and I was just like thinking, my goodness, they are so skilled at this. This is incredible. I could never do this sort of thing. And then realized a lot of the software did that. You could have layouts in Adobe Connect and switch from layouts and stuff like that. So I have learnt from the queen of webinars, which is the lovely Jo, of course. She's been an absolute star in helping me to find my way through some of the tips and tricks, and she's got a lovely way about her of actually sort of telling you that you've basically done a few crap things, but basically you've done all right in this without making you feel completely disheartened. So yeah, having somebody who can just sort of critique just in a gentle way some of the stuff that you're doing, so get some friendly faces on and have a little practice. And I did find that getting on, because Adobe Connect has got so much in it, I did find actually practicing moving from different layouts actually was quite key. And I think I agree with Kirsty as well that sometimes you have to go on to find out what it is that you can do. And so it's almost been like an iterative process, sort of like I knew what I could do, and so I went on and did some stuff, saw what other people were doing and thought, how can I do that? And then had a practice with people, got some feedback, and that's the way it's gone, sort of thing. And I always look for feedback about how things have gone and whether it's been engaging enough. And yeah, I would just say immerse yourself and have a look at, well, what's one thing? Don't try and do everything at once. That's the other thing, is that think of one new tool that you might be able to use and introduce, and try that for the next webinar. Don't try and do everything all at once. So I've never used breakout sessions, so that's the thing I'd love to do the next time that I run a webinar is use the breakout sessions. And I would say space it out, but absolutely each to their own. If you like to fly by the seat of your pants like Kirsty, then go for it, but I need a little bit more sort of bolstering and sort of like a bit more practice for me to feel confident in front of people on a webinar.
Brilliant answers, both. Thank you. And it shows a different approach. So for some people, absolutely a course will be the right thing. And it's really interesting, the courses that I run for people, we run sometimes 2 or 3 sessions, and people just need that little bit of confidence and push and get going. For other companies and organisations, it's 10 sessions with loads of practice and loads of technical support and loads of training on whatever their software is, WebEx, Adobe Connect, Zoom, there's hundreds of bits of software. So that will depend upon the company, it will depend upon the people, it always depends on budget, obviously. I would definitely recommend the practice on your own. Get 2 computers or even a tablet, so you can go, well, if I press that button, what comes up there for the attendee? Because then also what you're learning about is what happens if it goes wrong, what happens if the attendee clicks this, what do they see that's different for me, so I'm not giving them the wrong instructions. But also, exactly as Kirsty said, whatever you practice, when you go live, it's different. It's fun, it's exciting, it's exhilarating, stressful, and you will definitely learn kind of from that. Okay, and we've got a brilliant chat window going on. I'm trying to keep an eye on lots of things that are going there, and you're all sharing great things, you're all asking great questions, so please carry on with that. Con's asking who ran the session. Maybe I need to go and have a look back at that chat to see what it is you're talking about, Con. I'll come back to that one. So we have another question that has come through. This one is from Bianca. So Lorna, I'll come to you on this one. Bianca asks, what's your recommendation on the ideal duration?
For all the sessions I've ever run, I've always done a maximum of 90 minutes. I mean, I have a short attention span anyway, so 90 minutes is about as much as I can do anyway. But that seems to be the ideal length of time. We tried doing 2 hours before, and that was too long, I think. So 90 minutes. We do some sessions that are 60 minutes sometimes, but 90 minutes is definitely the longest that I I would encourage doing. Sometimes we have done, if we went in the early days, I have tried doing 3 sessions of 90 minutes in a day, but I think again for the individuals it was too much for them, so I would still try and keep rambling now, sorry, I'm just trying to think that through. I think 90 minutes is the maximum duration, and I wouldn't really do it any more than that, and I would space it over consecutive days if at all possible. That's what I would do.
I think you're absolutely right. It's going to be different for different organisations. I've seen some organisations have 15-minute sessions. That's really extreme. Half an hour or so. I've seen some organisations do all day. You can do all day, but you have to have amazing activities, great breaks. It has to be designed and delivered really well. I'd say definitely, and with Lorna, stick with the hour, hour and a half, maybe 2 hours if you have a break in the middle. They're good numbers, but it's all about the interactivity, it's about the design, it's about doing something different all the time, having great conversations, not just that kind of one-way lecture. Okay, our next questions, we'll come to Krystyna on this one first, then Kirsty. The question is from Lee Rogers. Thank you, Lee. He says, actually, I don't know if it's a lady or a man, I apologise. Do you think virtual facilitation enables sessions to be more focused and efficient?
Is that the virtual environment allows multiple people to be making comments at the same time, and when I've been using Adobe Connect, I've sometimes had like 4 chat boxes open at the same time with 4 different questions, and so in some ways you can actually focus very, very quickly on 4 different things, and you can guide people from one chat box to the next. You can pick up points that are being made in one of the chat boxes. So I'm not sure more focused and efficient, but I'm sort of like thinking it's different. It's very different because you can get so much more going on. You can't have, if you had 8 or 10 people, you can't have everybody shouting at the same time and being able to understand them. But actually within this environment you can have 4 chat boxes going and very easily spot what's going on, and that's the thing that I absolutely love when you're doing that, is having all those chats going on. And the thing that I've noticed is that there may be 4 questions there, and some people will not get one of the questions, but they'll get the others, you know, and so you'll have things going on, not necessarily in the same order. Some people will go through the order 1, 2, 3 and 4 of the questions, but some people will skip a question, and so you get a richness that and a speed that you couldn't get necessarily in a face-to-face.
Yeah, definitely agree with that, Krystyna. I think it can be really focused, especially if you're doing 90 minutes, 60 minutes, something along those lines. So we're in our last sort of 5-ish minutes before we go into a reflection piece. So we're not finishing, don't worry, we're still here, but I do want to go quick fire and get through some of your questions. So I'm going to fire these at Lorna, Kirsty and Krystyna and really put them on their toes. And you can see Kirsty's going, oh my goodness, already. Hilary asks a really great question. And I think I'll come to Kirsty on this one because you're a little bit newer to this and see what your thoughts are. Great advice on how to people get engaged, to get people engaged. I'm also interested in how to help people help themselves. I'm sitting in my usual workspace, emails pinging in, people bumbling around, and I'm realising how excellent this is for focusing my listening skills. Learners have a responsibility. How do you get that message
I think it goes back to having a really clear reason for the learning. And if you're really clear on what the objective is of that 90-minute, 60-minute session, and you're clear about that, and you state it up front as well at the beginning, like you would in a classroom environment or a workshop, people will start to understand what it is they're going to get out of the time, and also the why. Why are we here? Why are we doing this? That would be one of my start points.
Really like that. Thank you very much. So I'll come to Krystyna on the next question, but there's a quick one that I'm going to answer from Rick. He says, what are your preferred technologies or software for effective virtual classrooms? I could talk all day about this. There's loads of software out there, a lot of which I've used, a lot of which I haven't. What I would say is go and find out A, what your budget is, and B, what it is that you're delivering and how. It will make a difference whether it's one person on their own, whether it's software training, whether it's a group of people, whether you've got hundreds of sessions running concurrently, and what it is that you need. The key thing is you need to look at what the capabilities are, such as, does it have a chat window? So GoToWebinar is a really good example. It doesn't have a chat window, so you don't have what we're doing today. So make sure you go and find out those things, and then you will find what the right software is for you. So hopefully that's given you a really quick answer, Rick. There's no short answer about this is absolutely the right one. It depends on the situation. So we have a question for you, Krystyna. At the start of the webinar, you mentioned photos and pictures to encourage learning to happen. I found that interesting. How would you, in a webinar like this, use photos or pictures to improve the learning experience?
I don't want people really to be reading what's on the slides. I want them to be engaged. And so, for instance, if we were talking about a model, and this could be any model, it could be leadership or a learning model or whatever, I might get people to actually draw using the annotation tool on that model to sort of say, well, which bit do you get? Which bit do you need more explanation of? Which bit would you like to explore in more detail? Or I would actually take each part of the model and ask them questions about it. So because my sort of expertise is in the field of accelerated learning and learning, so for instance, David Mayer's model, I might take people through, well, let's look at the preparation phase, and I would ask them, okay, so now using your annotation tool and chat, what would you do in this phase, and get them just to write things, because there's a text sort of feature within the annotation tool. So pictures are a great way, because rather than you putting the words in their mouths, they create their own sense out of it. They make their own sense out of it. You give them the picture and then they start to add it, and so it becomes much more their webinar and what they're doing, because then the slides have got their writing on. And the other thing that I do is I actually would send a workbook beforehand, and again I wouldn't have lots and lots of words on it, but I'd have it as something that they might add to and put things in their own words. A really powerful way of remembering things.
Krystyna, I've just muted you. Really sorry about that. I know you're mid-flow. For some reason, you were coming through really buzzy and really, there was some problem going on there. So, Krystyna, just go to the meeting menu at the top left of the screen and go through the audio setup wizard, and we'll come back to you in a moment. So, meeting and audio setup wizard. So, sorry about that, guys. This is the joy of technology. Sometimes these things happen. We will come back to
really interesting
Krystyna.
Question,
we'll have a question for Lorna, first of all. So, Lorna,
I know some people
do you think it's a good idea to have presenters on screen
at the beginning,
time?
etc.? But I've never used them. I think one of the reasons is technical, because it does take up a lot of bandwidth, and for whatever reason in our organisation we can't use VoIP, so it's just something that we've just not used at all. But it goes back to what Krystyna was just saying a moment ago. I think if you have great design, people don't need to have that webcam, and for me actually I find it a distraction, because I'm trying to look at the person and look at the slide at the same time. So I personally have never used webcams, and this is actually quite a strange situation for me, because I've never had to use it in any of our sessions. So no, I wouldn't. Not to say that you shouldn't. If you want to, you can try that and see what reaction your staff get. But interestingly, our staff have never asked about it. Some, they have the webcam feature there and they've never tried to put it on, and they've never asked us if they can have it. And I think our training and coming back to the design, which I think is the key to all of this virtual classroom, this is what all of us are saying. If the design is right and you have got the learning right and you have the learners there to learn, that is what they focus on. I don't think they therefore need to have this webcam. And I think for some people it may be, and this may be controversial, for some people they think it's a comfort that people need to see them. And in the virtual world, I just don't think if you've designed it correctly and you've got great interaction, they don't need it. Is it, if you feel that you have to have a webcam, I think you have to ask yourself, is it because it's more reassurance for you and it's what you think the learners need, as opposed to what is actually needed? So that's the question that I would just ask regarding webcams. You're smiling there, Joe.
Really great point, Lorna. Thank you. And this is a different, it's a different format that we're doing here, and we decided to have the webcams on to make it more round table conversation like. But certainly in a virtual classroom, definitely agree with you. Loads of similar stuff coming through on the chat. Chris, let's just quickly check your audio, see if you're less of a Dalek. Yes, you're back. Which is brilliant. Thank you very much. And we'll come back to you shortly. Kirsty, did you want to say something quickly on that before I answer our last question and we go into our reflection?
A tag on Instagram or Twitter or a newsletter. So for me, there was something about being able to introduce myself and actually be able to let people know that I'm a human, to your point, Lorna. But then the way we run the format of the gathering online, it was appropriate that you couldn't see me because it was all about thinking and reflecting. So I used it quite specifically so people could actually go, oh yeah, that's what she looks like, and have a reference point. So that's when I've done it. But I hadn't really thought about, if you're in a virtual classroom, whether you would use your camera or not. I guess I'm out on that one right now.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to answer one last question before we move into our reflection. So Frank, you asked a question. You said, I experienced that webinars you moderate are among the most engaging and inclusive webinars I've participated in, which is really lovely to say about the TJ webinars. Thank you so much, Frank. When you prepare for a webinar, how do you find out which questions you will ask during the webinar? And that's a really interesting one, because for the TJwow webinars, we don't. We have the starting point question, which we have today, and that's kind of, if you like, the hook to get people involved. But very, very honestly, and the ladies here today will tell you, we have zero plans on the content. We riff. We're creative, we're organic, we go with what comes up in the chat window and what's right in the moment. I always say, if the four of us were in a pub, we wouldn't have any trouble having a conversation. And we've got 73 of us here today. So from that point of view, we never plan it. In terms of what we plan ahead of time, we link that with the magazine and our industry knowledge and so on. So I really hope that has answered your question, Frank. Okay, we're going to move into our reflection piece now. So Lorna, Kirsty and Krystyna are still here. We're still going to chat to them, but we are coming off webcam. So let's just have a little wave goodbye, and we'll move into our reflection questions. So we've had loads of great conversation today. And I really want to make sure that what we're doing now is having a reflection about this and what we're going to do next. Have a look at the tools that you've got on screen, and one of those is the text tool. Let's go and have a play with that. So click on the T text tool, go and type your name in, click on the whiteboard, and it will be revealed for everybody. So to go and have a click on that, type your name in. If you type over the top of someone, don't worry, no problem. There's an arrow tool at the top and you can pick your text up and you can move it. So give that a go and see how you get on. Brilliant. So we've got lots of you using that whiteboard. If you can't use the whiteboard, if it's not working for you, absolutely no problem. What we can do is we can use the chat window instead. Okay, so we've had a little bit of a practice here. Let's go into our Okay, lots of things. So some of you are typing over each other. Don't worry, we can pick your text up and move it around. I'm not going to read out every single one of these. This is the difference, a key difference between a webinar and a virtual classroom. In a virtual classroom, we have fewer people. I always recommend maximum of maybe 8 or 10 people, because it gets to this point where it's very, very busy. So I'm not going to read out all of these, but let's get a little flavour of some of your action points. Design and run one. Don't wait for our new technology. Do it now. Absolutely spot on. And I always say, you know, go with the software that you've got. There might be something out there better, but if you've got something, definitely go with it. Try out the breakout facilities, redesign slides to become less wordy. Silence can be okay. Practice with the software. Try things out. Encourage my team to play with the technology. If you've got a team, that's brilliant, because you can play and, you know, have people in different locations and see what's going on. Start to talk about virtual classrooms in my organisation, how we can benefit, play with breakout rooms to plan a classroom and interactions, read all the comments I've missed, review the call recording. I'm going to be doing that. I feel like I've got about 10% of what's been going on here. It's just so busy and so wonderful today. Let's have a really quick wrap up from Kirsty, Krystyna and Lorna. There's loads of stuff being shared here. So Kirsty, first of all, what are your final thoughts?
I actually wrote it on your action point, which is I'm going to go and join in a virtual classroom and learn more, because it is obvious that there are ways that you can bring this to life. And when you're working with corporates, this is a really great tool and way of working.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And Krystyna, final thoughts on everything that you're seeing here that people are taking away?
So work with what you've got, whatever software you use, whatever platform you use, work with what you've got and just make the most of it and enjoy.
Thank you very much. And Lorna, final thoughts?
Yes, just do it. I think. I mean, that's how I started. Don't get me wrong. I was scared when I first started doing this. Probably I shouldn't have said that, but I was. But I just actually having a go and starting small and then expanding it has been what has helped me. I mean, I didn't try everything. I tried what I knew of the technology and then learnt from other people such as yourself, Jo. So you can't, you know, learning from other people who are doing it day in and day out and learning what they are doing and seeing what they're doing. There's lots of people out there that are enthusiastic about this way of learning. And I think reach out to those people and just have a go. That's what I would say.
Oh, absolutely brilliant. Thank you. So we've got a really busy whiteboard there. I'm going to move on and say thank you so much to our three fabulous speakers, Kirsty, Krystyna and Lorna. Been really absolutely brilliant having you with us today. And I'm going to share their details in the chat room again so you can go and find out a little bit more about them. There are loads of links that have been shared that people are doing. Definitely go back and have a look at those if you can do. And also, you know, thank you very much to our sponsors, which is Sum Total Systems, a Skillsoft company. We've really appreciated that and their input as well. What are our next webinars coming up? Well, you know our sessions are going to be available online. All of our recordings are always on the TJ website, and you can go and find those. I answered that in chat just a little while ago for somebody. You can come and join us on #TJwow on Twitter if you want to continue the conversation. There's been some really great tweets there already. And our next webinar looks really interesting. Are we all salespeople for learning? Is that what we're doing in our organisations? That's next month. And then we have one in December all about communication and using social media for that as well. And Con said, yeah, Izzy. Yeah, so we've got Tim, Izzy and Jay, all really great speakers. And everybody, you have been absolutely amazing in this chat today. You've made this, I think, the busiest and best webinar discussion that we've had through TJ out of all of the ones that we've done. So thank you so much to all of you, and I really look forward to seeing you in the future. Really look forward to you guys sharing with us a little bit about your journey and what it is that you are doing in the future with your virtual classroom. So please do keep in touch through TJ, through TJwow, and through us as well, and tell us how you get on. So thank you very much. This is the end of our webinar, and we hope to see you in the future.